Hey guys, what's up? Week 385. Let's hop right into the reviews. Have a pretty big update as well. First one up is the new 4K release of Torso from Arrow Video. This is directed by Sergio Martino in 1973. And yeah, this is not produced by his brother, like a lot of his films. Now, Sergio Martino in the 70s, early 70s, he did 5 Gialli, but he did Suspicious Death of a Minor as well later on. So a lot of these ones had George Hilton and stuff like that. But this one actually doesn't. This has Susie Kendall from Bird with the Crystal Plumage and a slew of other films. Who else was? There's some other familiar faces, mostly Italian character actors and an international cast here. So Torso is pretty famous for being kind of a lot of people say, of course, a gialli with the mystery and all that kind of stuff like that. But there's also the angle of a slasher in here, and some people call it a proto-slasher. This film was made because Sergio Martino was I think he was in between projects, or he's actually directing a movie or writing this one at the same time, and he had heard about a case where somebody had murdered their in-laws, and they were going over there occasionally in the house and chopping up the bodies while their grandson or their kid would actually be playing out in the park or around the house and all that kind of stuff. So he thought that would make a great idea for a movie. This is also known as carnal violence. Torso in 4K. First and foremost, I got to say, originally this was on like Anchor Bay DVD, then Blue Underground DVD, and then it went into the Blue Underground Blu-ray. And as good as Blue Underground is, I always felt that Blu-ray, wasn't the best print, honestly. So when Arrow put out the Blu-ray, I was happy with it. This 4K looks amazing. The depth is amazing. The detail is amazing. And Torso has a lot of great scenes in here. A lot of good scenes. In the Italian films, of course, they want to minimize on new setups because it's usually a low-budget film. They're working with really good filmmakers. So essentially what they'll do is they'll get a lot of shots in one take. This follows a story of, a group of girls that are studying, or women that are studying, young women. Susie Kendall is like 36, and then she's supposed to play, kind of a college student, a little old for the role, but she looks great. She does a good job. She's a good actress, so who cares? They're essentially kind of in this, small kind of village area, their college town kind of deal. Well, by this small village, I'll get to it. I'm a little mixed up here. But they're kind of learning about these kind of strange things like that for college, and there's a guy who's really hung up on one of the friends, one of the girls. He's very bizarre. He's clearly a huge red herring in the film. And they decide to kind of move out to the country to get some vacation, get away from the city because there's been a slew of murders. There's been a couple murders. This is one of these 70s movies that's a carryover. The late 60s still has a lot of the hippie kind of style characters. There's this big scene where they go to this like party and there's these girls kind of dancing naked. It's like almost like kind of a, not a sex party, but it's pretty damn close. And that's one of the characters actually gets killed outside in like this muddy place in this really thick atmosphere. It's a really beautiful, well done scene. And a lot of these gialli people say, well, I got lost, I didn't understand that's bullshit. I think Torso is one of the more straightforward, probably because it has some slasher elements in there. So essentially we get our kind of main characters that move to this small village in kind of like a vacation house. One of their fathers is rich and they want them to go out there. Susie Kendall's there along with 3 of her friends, and what happens is they're hanging around, lounging around, outside naked and stuff, and the locals. This is where kind of the comedy and creepiness comes in, because the locals are drooling over them. There's a couple scenes where they're in town and there's this guy staring at them like they'd never seen anybody from the city. It kind of feels like you're like, is this going to go I Spit on Your Grave kind of level at one point? But it sets up a lot of possible red herrings. A big kind of, I guess a device, that they use, a plot device in here, is the kind of item that the killer is wearing, like a scarf that has like red and black on it and stuff like that, and that kind of plays into it. That's kind of, they throw you for a loop at certain points. But they definitely paint a couple characters that you think have to be the killers or possibly could be the killers. Luke Miranda is also in here. I should mention that French actor that went to Italy, and this is one of his first kind of big roles, I think, in an Italian film. He ended up popping up in another Sergio Martino movie, The Violent Professionals, among other films. But Torso, the killer starts picking these people off. But what it does in this scene, we see the murders in the beginning, right, as typical. This one kind of does like a weird thing where our lead character, kind of zones out or is out of commission for a while and comes down and realizes that a horrible act has happened. And that's a little bit, a lot of people watching this, but I want to see the kills. But as you look at it at kind of a standpoint of like script writing and story structure, you're like, this is a little different, a little ahead of its time. Really cool stuff. Obviously influential. The cinematography is fantastic. The Blu-ray, the 4K, looks amazing. Like I said, the details and everything like that's great. The score in here is wonderful as well. There's pieces of it that end up diegetic, a character playing it on the piano. Very memorable score. When I first saw Torso, I always liked it. I liked it. I didn't love it. It wasn't my favorite of, Martino's gialli movies. I think I prefer The Strange Vice of Mrs. Worth, or maybe Your Vice is a Locked Room and I Only Have the Key. Those two I think I preferred. I did prefer it over All Colors of the Dark. I put it on the same level as Suspicious Death of a Minor, and possibly, what is the other one? A Case of Scorpion's Tail I did like better as well. This time, I think it's right up there with Case of Scorpion's Tail and The Strange Vice of Mrs. Worth and Your Vice is a Locked Room. I think it's up there. I think it's fantastic, and it finally just took a couple watches. The special effects are good. The murders are really kind of brutal, and you get the idea in the interview with Martino. Martino really wasn't a guy who enjoyed gratuitous gore and violence and things like that. In the interview, he talks about, that Italy and a lot of that was changing at the time. More things were being put into screen, and, with France nearby and stuff, there was more liberation and kind of stuff like that. He said, hippies and sex and violence and that stuff was being more put into film. So that's what the audience called for, so he put it in there. But he was always a very capable director, and I always feel like I'm insulting the man when I say things like capable and great, but I don't want to call him a journeyman either, because his movies do stand out, and he's got to be. It's just going to sound weird, and I don't even want to say it, but he's got to be the second best gialli director after Argento. But, Bava's great, too. Bava all around is a better director than both of them, I think. But when you're talking just gialli, and, Fulci made some of my favorites. He made Don't Torture Duckling and The Psychic, which I think are favorite movies of mine ever. But, how many guys can you find that made 6 good ones in that short time period like that? Argento made some great ones, but he's made... but it's hard. I'm not saying Martino's the best, but he's up there. He's up top tier. And I've always looked at the big 3 Italian directors, Argento, Fulci, and Bava, Mario Bava. And then I always thought second tier would be Ruggero Deodato, Sergio Martino, and that kind of level right there, the next 2, right? And Berto Lenzi would be the next 3. So not they're A-list there, and then the B team. And B team is no insult. The B team is amazing. But I don't even want to call them B team anymore. But Torso looks fucking fantastic on 4K. I just was impressed with how it looked. I put it in and I was just I can't believe the depth on here, especially after watching some 4Ks and you're a little lackluster or just not done well. The depth here looked great. The cinematography is great. The location is wonderful. So they did everything they possibly could. Really, I was just couldn't believe, to be honest, that it looked this good. So as far as the special features are concerned, we poured over all the special features from the Blu-ray and the Sergio Martino set that came out from Arrow. We have 3 versions of the film. We have the 94-minute Italian and 90-minute English language export versions of the film restored. And then we also, I think there was you can watch the long version in Italian or English, and then there's some parts that are going to be in Italian. Then we have the export version, which is known as Carnal Violence over here, 90 minutes, some stuff cut out. And then we have restored original lossless Italian and English mono soundtracks, original Italian and English front and end titles, insert shots. And then we have optional English subtitles, of course, for the Italian soundtrack. And then we have audio commentary by Kat Ellinger. That's good, of course. Author of All Colors of Sergio Martino, All Colors of Terror. Interview with co-writer-director Sergio Martino. The Discreet Charm of the Genre. Interview with Luke Miranda. Talks about the passing of his father, hurting himself on set when he was handcuffed on certain movies. Dial S for Suspense. Interview with co-writer Ernesto Gastaldi, who wrote every gialli almost. Women in Blood. Interview with filmmaker Federica Martino, daughter of Sergio Martino. Saturating the Screen. Interview with Michael J. Coven, author of La Dolce Morte, Vernacular Cinema and the Italian Giallo film. And then we have 2017 Abattoir International Horror Festival Q&A with Martino, alternate openings and closing credits for the United States for U.S. release, English and Italian theatrical trailers, reversible sleeves, all sorts, featuring original and newly commissioned artwork by Adam Rabayes, illustrated collector's booklet featuring writings on the film by Adrian Smith and Howard Hughes. So a great release. Upgrade, well worth it. If you're a big fan of the movie, don't be like, oh, is it really worth the upgrade? Because I think it looked amazing. So, great stuff. Okay, next one up is from Synapse Films, and this is from 1996, and this is Mike Mendez's directorial debut, and this is The Killers, or just called Killers, aka The Real Killers, which was a title that I had on DVD. So, this is one thing that's very bizarre about The Killers. This movie really didn't have a nice release until this Blu-ray, really, in the States. There was a VHS, of course, but there were some import DVDs years ago, and there was original cuts of the movie. I think the director's cut eventually settled on Indigada Divida during a certain part, but there was one version out there that had In the End, the end by the Doors on there. I remember watching that version vividly. But The Killers. Killers. This is one of my friend's favorite movies, so he always turned me on to this, Keith Foyt Jr. So he talked about a lot of this. Mike Mendez also directed The Convent, Big Ass Spiders, Don't Kill It. He worked on Tales of Halloween. He's a good director, a good genre director, fun guy. If you ever hear him on podcasts, he's a big toy collector, loves movies. Just overall sweet guy. Right? And a good director, too. So Killers. Rewatching this was kind of a treat. Synapse remastered it. It looks fantastic on Blu-ray. I mean, it looks fantastic. That's all I can say about it. And it's shot on film. It's a low-budget movie. They used their friend's house. They put it up for leverage here. But, yeah, so what we have here is definitely kind of in, the post-Tarantino world, post-Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, all Natural Born Killers, all that kind of style here. We have these two brothers, the James brothers, Odessa James, and they escape from a maximum security prison, and they go on a kind of duck down in this small town. They decide to invade this house. And what we have here is what you think is your typical, Midwestern great family. We have an agent on their trail who has a history with Odessa, the older brother, and whatnot. So this is definitely like kind of aping the Menendez brothers, who just had a Netflix documentary come out, who murdered their parents. That's exactly what these two did. They said there was years of abuse, and then they killed their parents, and they'd be kind of like on a kill spree. They're kind of crazy. They're world famous. The news outlets and media and stuff has put them over everywhere. And they're kind of in the vein of, Mickey Mallory Knox, Bonnie and Clyde, whatever, John Dillinger, whatever you want to say, right? But so they move into this house, and at first, at surface value, you're like, oh, it's your typical 50s kind of great Leave It to Beaver family, wife, 2 kids, and whatnot, not husband. But you could tell right under the surface, they're bizarre, they're weird. And I don't want to spoil the twist, because it's probably the best part of the movie. That's the third act, and it picks up. It's probably the second act where it does, but it picks up, and it gets a lot better. So, first and foremost, Killers, the acting on a lot of people, the dialogue, it's not perfect. It's cringy at times. It's very heavy dialogue, very hard to do when you're not, Samuel Jackson, Woody Harrelson. It's just not... And I have to admit that sometimes the dialogue was, ooh, man, that's very 90s. It's very dated. It doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's very much a product of its time. Sometimes we love that. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes it sticks out. Sometimes it doesn't. This time it stuck out for me. And I thought some of the acting was very shaky. Saying that, it's full of action. It's full of ambition. There's tons of shootouts. There's a great little twist in here that's a lot of fun. And that twist really helps the acting, because you realize that some characters are putting on a facade. And they have this overlayer kind of sheen that shouldn't be there. Overall, I think The Killers is a fun movie. I think it's a great debut. I think it looks great on film. It's a little long in places. It does feel like it's getting a little repetitive. It's very Tarantino style, not nearly as good as those ones, or not on the level of a Gun and Gun and 45, what was that movie? Love in a 45, which is another Tarantino-style movie, or Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, which I'm a huge fan of that film. This is more of the kind of cool, hold your gun sideways, sunglasses, spewing a bunch of fucking lines that may come across as complete and utter bullshit, very, what's the word I'm looking for, self-indulgent. And I'm a big Tarantino fan, but, sometimes it can be a much, and sometimes other people try to do it. But it's a little bit like that. As far as the special features are concerned, we have original unrated director's cut scanned and restored by Multicom Entertainment Group. The audio commentary with director Mike Mendez and author horror journalist Michael Gingold. Original promotional trailers, alternate ending, liner notes by critic writer Heather Drain. Now, spoilers alert. So, okay, I like the movie. Now, the twist makes it great, because they invade this house, but do not realize that there is a whole nother underground basement with a bunch of people that are held captive, and this whole family is crazy. They're violent, they're sex-starved, they have sex they're incestuous, they're killers, they kill people for fun. The father is like an ex-army vet, and he's just a cold-blooded monster, and his performance becomes a lot more fun, a lot more crazy. But yeah, as it goes on, it gets weirder and weirder. There's a character called Bob, which is, very fun, very people under the stairs kind of style character. Overall, Killers is really cool. And it's not perfect, but I enjoy it for what it is, and I think as a debut film, it's really fun. There is a twist at the very, very end, which I do find great. I think the relationship between the agent and Odessa James is iffy. There is some sex scenes, there's nudity, so, they didn't skip out on the gratuitous stuff that a lot of people will be looking for in 1996. Killers. Okay, next up is from 88 Films. This is a Shaw Brothers flick from 1979, and this is To Kill a Mastermind. That's right. So this one kind of reminds me of something like the Five Deadly Venoms or something like that, because there's a lot of people pointing fingers at each other. So there's a group of these, I think 8 like badass generals that kind of are ruling this area over, and they have rankings, of course. You're 1, you're 2. In the very beginning, we're introduced to 3 guys who are going to join their rankings, and they have to prove a test. They kill a bunch of people's all their special weapons, very Shaw Brothers, right? Rip off the heads with the guy has like a Kung Lao thing where you put it around and pull their heads of Kung Lao from Mortal Kombat, right? The guy throws the hat. It's a little different though. It's kind of the flying guillotine kind of guillotine thing that they had in one of the movies that pulls people's heads off. It's kind of the Hong Kong movie, but kind of that vein. So what happens is there's a group of people that want these guys out. They're kind of waging war against them, and they're like, we have to kill the mastermind. We can kill this group of generals, but there's a guy behind all this pulling the strings and everything like that. And they have a really crazy cock and mini contraption that shows how they get it. They like put it down a tube and it comes down a ball. They tell everybody what's going on. But what happens is there's like kind of some women that hang around these guys, and they have like power as well, and they kind of have women that service them and all this kind of stuff like that. And somebody starts to plant these seeds of doubt where they all start turning on each other, and they all are badasses. A couple of them are brothers. They all have special fighting techniques, and you start to really kind of like the characters. At one point, they're ambushed, and they think there's a traitor amongst them. So it's very, like in lamest terms, Reservoir Dogs, right? Well, he did this and he did that, or Five Deadly Venoms, right? Where you think somebody's coming up. It's not as good as Five Deadly Venoms, but still, where you don't know who to trust, you don't know what these people are. So they all start turning on each other, and eventually they start picking each other off one by one until there's a final reveal at the end, and a lot of people aren't saying who they are. I think like the last 3 or 4 people are like, oh, I'm actually this, I'm actually that, well, I'm this, and it's like, you're like, okay, that's all right. But the fighting is great. It's very entertaining. I enjoyed the hell out of it. The characters are cool, they're memorable, and it's just kind of a warring faction where a lot of these characters end up going against each other with different style weapons and getting picked off. It does feel kind of like, a horror film is like getting picked off or killing each other off, but it's not. To Kill a Mastermind doesn't have any special features, which is kind of a bummer. It's got a lot of actors from Hong Kong movies and martial artists that you would recognize, though. As far as the special features, we just have HD transfer from original negative and 2.351, high definition Blu-ray presentation, 2-point Mandarin mono with newly translated subtitles, English subtitles, of course, and Hong Kong poster here. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite Shaw Brothers movie, but it's a solid one that's very enjoyable with good characters and good fighting, which is all you can ask for when you're talking about a Shaw Brothers flick. I mean, you can ask for more because they do deliver a lot of more, but this is what you're looking for if you're looking for a martial arts Shaw Brothers movie. Okay, the next one here is also from 88 Films, another Shaw Brothers flick, and this is The Shadowboxing. And this is 1979 as well. And on the back, they say this predates stuff like Encounters of the Spooky Kind, which I love, and I reference all the time, and Mr. Vampire, which I like as well. So I'm like, holy shit. So I was imagining the shadow boxing. I've not really heard of this film, but you see the spells on there, which is very prevalent in Asian films, Asian culture kind of deal, the spells. In particular Hong Kong movies. You'll see it in some modern day Korean films like The Wailing, or a film I'm going to talk about later this week. But yeah, so the shadow boxing, it opens up and it kind of gives you a little history lesson, which these often kind of do. A lot of times they'll be like, this dynasty did this and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, and there's these monks and whatnot. And this time they're talking about, corpse herders. And you're like, oh shit. I was like, this is totally up my alley here. So in ancient China, when somebody would die far away from home, they couldn't afford, to travel, with like a wagon or anything like that. So a lot of people would be called corpse herders. And what they would do is they would kind of shroud themselves and walk with like a lantern in the middle of the night. And just imagine seeing that. It's very gothic, very scary, which is why it's amazing that, they're going to make movies about it now and everything. The Shaw Brothers is perfect to do it. So essentially, they're going to add some more supernatural elements into this film, of course, where they put the spells on there and they can control it. This is very comedic as well. So what we have here is an old master who knows everything about the spells and moving these bodies. He's teaching a younger guy, his protege, if you will, and they're great at martial arts as well. And then there's a young woman who's disguised as a man that wants to get involved and help as well. So these two are traveling, and what happens is it Gordon Liu? Oh, I think it is Gordon Liu. He's in a million of these movies. I feel like I'm missing him. I don't want to mess this up. Yeah, Gordon Liu. He's in Kill Bill. He's in every Shaw Brothers movie I've ever seen. He's in half of them. So he sneaks in with the corpses, and he's shaved bald, and he's actually wanted by a military boss for being framed or something along those lines and everything like that. He's a police officer in the military, I think. Some along that line. He's an authoritarian figure at one point. Now he's been framed because he's doing the right thing, and they caught him. So he sneaks in there. So he's always off, like they're controlling the corpses and they're bouncing, like as they do. The hopping vampires is what they call them. Sometimes they refer to them as vampires or ghosts or any kind of midnight creature, I guess you'd say, in this kind of culture. So they're hopping, but Gordelou's always late, and the younger guy's like, "There's something off about that bald guy. I know he's off. I know something's wrong." And as they progress, hijinks ensue. At one point, they fight a group at a gambling house because they are accused the leader, the old man, the master, of being a cheater, but he's not. And there's this big fight scene and everything like that. And we learn why Gordon Liu is hiding from these people, why he's trying to get revenge on them, how he's sneaking through there. There's a lot of silly hijinks, like the bodies get lost, they're looking for them, they're arguing with people, they have to disguise themselves as bodies. This is a lot of fun. Is it as good as Encounters of Spooky Kind? No. Is it worth watching? Absolutely. Did I really like it? Yes. Would I watch it again? Yes. I like these hopping vampires movies. I like this kind of weird look at their kind of mythology of vampires and ghosts and things like that. It's different from the United States. And I've been watching so many of these movies the last few years that I'm getting a taste for it, and I just kind of am developing a more fondness for it. It's almost like if I put on an American vampire movie, I was like, why aren't these vampires hopping? Even though in reality these are less vampires, they're more ghosts, they're just controlled kind of spirits. It's less horror than you would imagine, but the shadow boxing is really fun. Good stuff. Good ending too. Fun ending. So as the special features are concerned, we have, of course, brand new artwork by Mark Bell and reversible sleeve featuring original Hong Kong poster, HD transfers from original negative in 2.351, high definition, Blu-ray, Mandarin, English subtitles. That's it. No special features on these, which is kind of a bummer, but they're still great releases. They look good. Check them out. The Shadow Boxing. Not to be confused with The Shadow Boxer, which is also, I believe, a Hong Kong film. And is it a Shaw's? I think it might be a Shaw Brothers. Okay, this next one here is a North Korean film, and this is Exhuma from Well Go USA. This is also out on 4K if you're interested. This is a long film. Hey, it's Korean. It's a horror film that made it to the States. You already know it's long. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, They are tremendous at, these movies. I've never really seen a bad Korean movie, and as far as Korean horror films are concerned, they're usually top-notch. So, yeah, I don't know the director here, Jang Jae-hun. He's directed 2 other feature films, one a thriller, one a horror, and a short horror film. It stars everybody's favorite actor in here, Choi Ming-suk, who is in I Saw the Devil and Old Boy. He's Old Boy himself. He's one of the best Korean actors there is. So this is going to be a mouthful here. First and foremost, saying this, I love this movie. And I always complain I'm not the biggest on new movies, but a lot of the Korean films and a lot of the other countries' films are usually fantastic. They're more up my alley. Not that there's anything wrong with a lot of American films now. Horror films, they're making good movies every year. It's just that I don't have the time to dig through them like I used to. I mean, I do, but I choose to watch old movies instead. That's just more my MO. I do like a lot of new movies when I watch them. It's just that I prefer to watch old films. That's how I am. But Exhuma, so the plot here, fantastic. Okay, so we have a geomancer, who is a guy who finds the best places to, build buildings for goodness and plant graves, all these kind of things like this. So he is partners with, the big kind of guy who runs the mortuary kind of deal. And he's like the number one mortuary guy. He buried like the last president or something like that. They always say that. They have a good friendship, relationship. And then there's 2 others, younger people that I think are like practically family. They're not genuinely related. I think they might be cousins, actually. They're cousins. And they practice this kind of stuff where they have these special kind of powers. And all of them kind of help with exhuming bodies and replanting them and stuff like that when families are haunted. So in the beginning, we have this newborn baby who seems to have a lot of problems and complications, but we don't really know why. So they've had all the doctor tests. There's nothing wrong with them. So they think it's something that this child is possibly haunted. And they go to look into the ancestors, and they're looking at, the grandfather is buried in a very strange plot of land out of nowhere. So they go there, they hire these people. The guy's very rich, and they start to look at the plot. And right away, Choi is like, I don't like this place. I don't think I want to do this. I just, the way it's facing, there's longitude and latitude lines on the tombstone. Something's not right. There's foxes around. All these kind of great kind of ideas of, superstition and mythology and kind of culture in there. And I'm like, this is really interesting to me. I love this stuff. So they end up deciding to dig up the body, and something goes wrong, of course. And we dig up the body and something goes wrong, of course. But yeah, and then for the first hour or so, we are like, okay, we have like a creepy, scary ass haunting movie, and I realize what does scare me in movies, and I registered that. Like Terrified is one that doesn't, not Terrifier, but Terrified, the South American film. It's when there's some sort of alternate reality. It's not necessarily an alternate reality, but with your human eyes you can't see it. But if I were to look in a reflection in a window and behind me and see it, and then turn around, it's not there. that terrifies me, and that happens a lot in here. And it's really well done because the ghost goes right after his ancestors and starts killing them. I'm hungry, and he starts. It's terrifying stuff, and you're like, that situation is handled, and you're like, okay, what the hell's gonna happen next? And I don't want to spoil what happens next, but it's not your typical ghost. It's absolutely horrifying. It's one of the best moments in any film I've seen in a long time. I absolutely loved it. The visual effects are amazing. The fire in the air going back and forth I thought was great. But I don't want to spoil this, but they end up having to face a bigger foe, a scarier foe, and more mythology, more background, more spells, and watching all these, Asian films, especially from Hong Kong and stuff like that, and even popping in stuff like from Taiwan and Indonesia and all these different Asian countries, and seeing how they handle, mysticism and religions and all these kind of things like that, and superstitions and culture, and it's like really interesting when it, the aspects and horror in those. And when I watch stuff like The Wailing, which is a modern film from Korea, and Exhuma, I have a deeper appreciation for it than I would 10 years ago. And I think that this isn't going to be the most approachable movie for a lot of people. I think that people like it. If they haven't seen these other movies, I think they'll appreciate the great acting, the great cinematography. Every frame in this movie looks like a fucking painting. But I think that with a little bit of more, just background to that stuff, or just watching that stuff, you don't need to be an expert in it, just seeing it and kind of being familiar with it to a certain extent, I think that it helps a lot. And I think Exhuma is a fantastic movie. I loved every second of it. Wonderful acting, violent when it needs to be violent, scary when it needs to be scary, and dramatic and heartfelt when it needs to be dramatic and heartfelt. Love the characters, love the acting, love everything about it. As far as the special features are concerned, we have a making of and a trailer. That's it. The making of is very short. Looks fantastic. Great Dolby Atmos 7.1 mix, really good stuff when you hear like the crying or the characters in the back, like the evil character, it's like, oh, going around your surround sound, you're like, oh, where's he at? It's really well done. But yeah, Exhuma, great stuff. Okay, the next one up is from Vinegar Syndrome Archive, and this is An Eye for an Eye from Hong Kong from 1990. So I'd never heard about this one, didn't know too much about it. I do know that it is Cat 3, and they talk about this in the special features, and if you know Eddie Cat 3 kind of stuff, Cat 3 was a rating that popped up in 1988 with stuff like Men Behind the Sun in Hong Kong, and it was for gratuitous violence or sex or, homosexuality. Not even gratuitous, it's just that homosexuality was a really touchy subject in Hong Kong at the time. Unfortunately. And then there's also they didn't like seeing triad stuff. So any gang-related stuff was a big no-no and stuff like that. So a lot of movies got slapped with it. Now this movie does have its violence, it does have its action, but it's all triad kind of stuff like this. So what we have is this this woman is the main character, this lady, and her dad is like a triad boss, or kind of getting out of the business kind of deal, but he's still running this triad boss, and she's dating this police officer, and they have a mutual friend that is also in love with her. So we have a love triangle right away. What happens is there is a shakedown where this other triad kind of sets up the father to get arrested and does something stupid. So the father takes the rap, gets put away in jail, prison. He starts to get sick, and this other triad kind of guy moves in, kind of puts a divide and between them with the father and all this kind of stuff. It puts a divide between her and her boyfriend, and this triad starts to force her to do what he wants, rapes her, uses her, forces her to marry her and stuff like that. So it's really fucked up. It's really dark and whatnot. And then in between this, there's action sequences and things like that. And as it progresses, these cops definitely have more feelings that come out, and they talk to each other and they have fights. And by the end of it, it's called Eye for an Eye for a reason. And there is some great set pieces here. And, at one point there's, some takeover of a gang. And there's a big scene in a restaurant where a bunch of people are getting killed and fighting, and it pours out into the street, and that's great stuff. That's the kind of stuff I think people are looking for when they think of, triad movies or something like that. And, it's less like your typical Hong Kong gunplay movie, where you have your John Woo shooting everybody up, and it's more in line with the Battles Without Honor and Humanity, where you see those big fight scenes with like sticks and stuff like that, and swords and blades. It feels so much more like that than it does more your typical Hong Kong fighting style, but still entertaining nonetheless. The villain in this movie is ruthless. He is a monster. He is such an unlikable, despicable fucking scumbag. Does a good job. I hated him the whole movie. And there's also kind of like a hitman character who has an underling, and that plays into the fact, the whole story and everything. It looks really good, sounds good, solid movie. There's a song that a character sings for karaoke that I think plays throughout the movie later on and stuff, and emotional, good stuff. Good film, They do mention this kind of being in like the start or kind of in the middle of something like the heroic bloodshed movement, where you have like John Woo's movies and things like that, which are really good stuff. But as far as the special features, we have newly restored by VHS from Studio Supplied Master, presented in original Cantonese mono soundtrack with newly translated English subtitles, brand new commentary track with Kenneth Borgian and Phil Gillian of Podcast on Fire Network, brand new interview with director Oh Sing Poo, brand new interview with action director Ben's Kong. Hong Kong cinema in the late 80s between heroic bloodshed and Cat 3 thrillers. 15 minutes, a brand new video essay by film historian and author Sam Deegan. So that's kind of talking about, the transition between, let's say, The Killer, or let's say Hard Boiled is probably more known than The Killer. Hard Boiled to Daughters of Darkness, right? So you have that kind of like, and it's definitely in between there. Like we have like a rape scene in here, stuff like that. And that starts being really prevalent in the early 90s with stuff like Dr. Lamb and Untold Story and Daughter of Darkness and Brother of Darkness and Red to Kill and, Run and Kill, all that kind of shit like that, which is great movies, and then we kind of have that. And that's a really good special features. They mentioned, encounters of the first encounters of the dangerous kind, which is a fucking fantastic movie. And I imagine that's kind of like the same movies, like kind of like Man on the Brink, and those kind of movies where it's like youth in trouble kind of deal. What's the one from 1980? I can't think of it. That's a little ahead of the time. There's a bunch of them from 1982 that I watched from Hong Kong that are really good. What's the one with the group of kids where they accidentally like get caught up in like murder in a gas station, and the very end's like they're on the rooftop. Jeez, now I can't remember. I'm getting old. But yeah, An Eye for an Eye, good stuff. Check it out. It's from VSA. The next one I'm going to be very brief with, although it's a huge movie. I'm going to be brief with it because if I ever get to the 60s, which I plan on if I don't die first, I'm going to cover it. Probably have some people on if they're still alive, if I'm still alive. But I covered this on the Slumber Party Massacre podcast. We talked about cults on there, so when that pops up, I'm on the show with Lacey Liu and Carly Sonnenfeld and, of course, Rebecca Reinhardt. All three of them, involved with movies and podcasting, all that stuff. Great people. Heather was not on the show, but she's also awesome. And we covered cults. So what's the biggest cult horror film of all time? Yes, Rosemary's Baby by Roman Polanski, 1968. Same year as Night of the Living Dead. Kind of changed horror forever, both those movies, and I always kind of hold them hand in hand. The second of the Apartment trilogy from Roman Polanski, Repulsion being the first in 65, this is 68, and then the last being The Tenant in 76. Yes, so, it stars Mia Farrow, John Cassavetes, Ruth Gordon, has a small little cameo by William Castle, a bunch of other people in here as well. Charles Grodin has an early role. But what can I say about one of the most iconic movies ever? I guess watching it this time around, I realized that there's a layer of dark comedy that I haven't seen this movie in 15, 20 years. So it's been a very 15, maybe closer to 15. It's been a very long time, but the dark comedy is actually really funny, especially in Ruth Gordon's character like that. There's a million think pieces on this movie about talking, the modern feminist woman kind of moving, cutting her hair, and everybody's kind of oppressing her and stuff like that. In the very end, she's still broken down, right? She decides to raise the kid. So essentially, Rosemary's Baby is the story of a woman who is dating John Cassavetes, and they're Roman, I think his name, Roman's the other guy's name, the Ruth Gordon's husband. But they move into this apartment, and Liza Cook Jr. shows them around, great character actor, and something's not right. Right away, the neighbors are very nosy. The person, one of the tenants kills themselves in a very depressing way. And what happens is, Mia Farrow starts to be kind of mistreated, and one night she is drugged and she's raped, but she has by her husband. She has a terrible nightmare sequence that involves Satan and JFK on a boat, and it's fucking crazy and bonkers and really ahead of its time if you look at movies from that time and movies that would become influenced later on from it. But she ends up being pregnant. And basically she is gaslit by a bunch of people, and we know what this is. It's a cult, right? You've seen movies lift from it. You've seen movies be inspired by it, from Hereditary to a million other movies, right? Rosemary's Baby is one of the most important horror films that ever come out, just to ensure influence, no matter how you personally feel about it. One of the big three in the satanic movement, right? Those movies, not satanic movement like they're pushing Satan, but a lot of people saw Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, and The Omen, and they became ultra religious. That's the funny thing about a lot of things in culture. A lot of people will make reference to Paradise Lost or something like that, or Dante's Inferno in terms of the religious, and those are two fiction-based books off the Bible, right? Like, they're basic fiction, and people are making reference. So a lot of people, probably, a lot of people learn some of these things or got the fear of God in them from movies, which it is what it is. Well, but as far as the cinematography, it's absolutely fantastic. The acting is great. The plot is great. There's a lot going on here. It's based off a novel. Originally, William Castle was going to direct, but they decided against it because, Castle had done that whole kind of supposedly schlocky thing with stuff like The Tingler and House on Haunted Hill. He was the gimmick man, and we can't give the gimmick man a movie, but it's kind of cool that William Castle produced this, right? This very important movie. His movies are important too. I love William Castle. Without Castle, we don't have a lot. But overall, Rosemary's Baby, what the fuck can I say about it? It's an absolute classic. It's one of these movies that, no matter what anyone personally feels about it, I like the movie. I think it's great. But it doesn't really matter. It's already made its place in history. And as it's always so funny when somebody's like, I hate Rosemary's Baby, I hate Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like, no one gives a shit. No one cares. It's hard, you know what I mean? Like, it's fun to talk about and stuff like that, but like people make these like crazy statements, and it's like, you have your opinion, that's perfectly fine and everything like that, but it's just always 90% of the time everybody's like, it's over. I mean, like, the discussion's over. Discussion about it's great, but coming out with like such a negative thing without reasoning is so strange when somebody does that to like classics. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have Rosemary's Baby, a retrospective, Mia and Roman, 50th anniversary Red Band trailer, and then of course I have the Criterion Blu-ray as well. That's just the Blu-ray up there with a bunch of special features on it. A fantastic movie, classic movie. Mia Farrow, just for people to know, was married to Frank Sinatra while they were making this, and they ended up getting a divorce because of it, so that's pretty crazy too, because she decided to stay with the film and make it. And also Mia Farrow sisters with Tisa Farrow, who probably more people know on this channel than they do Mia Farrow, because Tisa Farrow was in Zombie. That's right, the Lucio Fulci classic. And wasn't she in Anthropophagus? I think she might have been in Anthropophagus. Maybe Last Hunter. She's in a handful of movies. Is she in Last Hunter? She's in a handful of these Italian kind of horror films. But anyways, Rosemary's Baby, classic. Check it out. All right, guys, let's get into those 1982 movies. Me.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
Son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you who loves and will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You called me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
Please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to... Please stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
All right, first one up is from Severin Films. Now, I decided to watch a composite cut. This movie has a couple cuts. It has a softcore version and a hardcore version. And then somebody went and made a composite cut of this movie. This is Satan's Baby Doll from 1982, of course. And this is an Italian horror flick directed by Alan W. Cools. That's not right. This is a very Italian guy. Who's in this one? The mother from Burial Ground is in here. The one who has the, nipple trauma, as I'll put it. So, Satan's Baby Doll. I remember the music being really fun in this. I like the music right away. It's short for the most part, unless you watch the composite hardcore kind of version. But what we have here is a mom just recently dies, and right in the beginning of the movie, her eyes jolt open. And the daughter sees it, and she's petrified. All the people around, the doctor, the servant, the father, and everybody's like, what's going on? What? And the father knows that... He's like, she was dead, yada yada. There's also a nun there, who is the lady from Burial Ground, and her and the mother seem to have some sort of connection. They were definitely fucking. Especially in the hardcore version, you kind of get a little bit of more hints at that, not just full-blown showing it. But, so right away, something's off right here. And weird shit starts happening. The daughter's called down in the middle of the night to the morgue, and it's kind of like the crypt, the big castle where they have it in the basement and everything like that. And she kind of sees movements and stuff like that. And before long, it gets really incestuous. The father's trying to fuck the nun. The doctor is iffy. Everybody's weird. He's giving them painkillers and shit like that. The father's addicted. It's really dark and nasty and weird. And before long, you realize that this is going to get more crazy, right? We have a paraplegic or it's paraplegic. It's not quadriplegic. Paraplegic brother who's been injured and everything like that. So people start getting picked off. This movie reminds me a lot of Patrick Still Lives from 1980, the unauthorized sequel to Patrick. So it's kind of in that vein, the Italian sequel to Patrick, which is really sleazy and trashy and fun. It's not as sleazy and trashy as fun as Patrick Still Lives, but it's building its way towards it. I mean, there's more sex in here in the hardcore version. And it looks like the same actors and actresses in those scenes, to be honest. I don't know how different they got the inserts. But people are picked off. It's not gratuitously, violent, I guess. I don't think there's too much gore. But a lot of the nasty stuff towards the end is really wild. Mothers taking over their daughter's body and trying to have sex with this nun. I was just like, man, this is dirty. This is dirty shit, man. This is like Sister of Ursula, Burial Ground, and what is it? Strip Nude for Your Killer, dirty. Dirtier, probably, than those movies. What was the other one I mentioned? Of course, Patrick Still Lives. But Satan's Baby Doll, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to lie. I like my Italian films. I like my films sleazy, classy, trashy, Euro. I like that kind of shit. As far as the special features, Exorcism of a Baby Doll, interview with director Mario Bianchi. Now, I don't know if Mario Bianchi is related to Andre Bianchi, who directed Burial Ground and Strip Nude for Your Killer, but I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. But yeah, Satan's Baby Doll. Okay, next up from 1982 is The Pencil Murders. And I think this is what, I should have looked Amsterdam or Denmark, somewhere around there. I'm fucking this up already, Dave. You're fucking it up, Dave. But yeah, The Pencil Murders. And this is a European giallo from an untypical kind of country that makes these kind of movies. Now, what we have here is somebody going around, they call it a crayon, but it's a colored pencil, and he's jamming fucking pencils up people's nose and killing them. Mostly women, mostly all have the same type, kind of look like blonde hair, kind of modelish type. And it's really weird because they look a lot like the lead detective's wife, who he's on the outs with because she's having an affair with somebody and all sorts of things like that. And he's a workaholic, so there's a lot of drama between those two. And he ends up going to live with the photographer, the police photographer, and they started to form this friendship and stuff. And he's like, you don't need her, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of that. A lot more of that than a lot less pencil killing than one might expect. But the killings are well done, the build up to them, the suspense, right? The well done, he's creeping around and bop. And I mean, you don't really see the killer. There's a mystery element to it. It's a relatively short film. It's pretty effective. It works pretty well. It's interesting enough. I liked it. The killer's kind of obvious because you got to that point, you're like, it's got to be this kind of character. I like it. It's not great. It's not as interesting, I guess. It's more interesting than great, right? That this movie even exists. It's not like the super most entertaining thing. The idea of somebody shoving pencils up somebody's nose is pretty grotesque. I kind of like that idea. It's not goofy though. There's not much humor in it, although some of the characters, it's not. It's just got a weird kind of vibe to it all around. I don't know how to explain that. And like, maybe it's Belgium. I think it's probably Belgium because it fits in line with something like, I know it's not as comedic as like Killer Condo, but it does have that kind of same vibe. Or something like Bizarre. Like, I don't know why, it just reminds me of that really bizarre like Strangler versus Strangler movie, but no elements of comedy. I don't know how to explain it. There's just sometimes you get these movies that I think that's like a Czech movie or something like that. But Pencil Murders is a solid giallo style thing. Not much going on. It's short. It's cool to see a different country's giallo. The murders are decent. Overall, it's all right. I like it. I don't love it. I would watch it. I would recommend it. I would like to see some context behind this fucking thing. Maybe a special features. Maybe a Blu-ray. Who knows? Pencil Murders. It's okay. Okay, the next one here. It's a rewatch, unfortunately for my poor soul. And this is the Loch Ness Horror. Directed by Larry Buchanan. Now, Larry Buchanan directed a bunch of movies in the 60s, like It's Alive. No, not that It's Alive, a different It's Alive. And kind of like monster movies and stuff like that. He's a very regional, independent director. And I'm not super familiar with Larry Buchanan's work, except Loch Ness Horror. For some reason, I decided to rewatch this because I have to be a completist and a masochist. That's me. So, basically, what we have here is Loch Ness Horror. I doubt this was shot in England. It's very low budget. The worst Scottish accents ever. There's an old man during World War II. He's looking out the window. We get the idea that he knows Nessie, he's seen Nessie, and he sees this plane going overhead. And it's really poorly done because he's looking through a telescope, but we're seeing from him looking down on a plane. It's like, that's not how fucking telescopes work. You're looking from this thing, a castle. You can't see from above a fucking plane. It's probably hundreds of feet in the air. And then later, like, the telescope's, like, getting weird angles on a fucking Nessie or whatever, the Policeus or whatever the fuck it is. And you're just like, no, that's not how fucking telescopes work, okay? But that's nitpicky. So what we have here is we fast forward. Now Nessie's still in the lake. We have this guy who comes here. I don't know if he's a marine biologist, what the fuck his job is. He's a terrible actor, nonetheless. He's one of the worst actors I've seen in a movie in a long time. And he's like, I don't really know. He's got, like, with this really, like, kind of like shit-eating like voice that you're like, I swear, shit-eating grin, like you say, but he has like a fake kind of voice. Feels like he's putting on a newscaster voice or something like that. And they're looking for Nessie. He pairs up with, this old man's granddaughter, who also has got a really bad Scottish accent, as well as the old man. And then like the military gets involved because they're trying to cover up whatever that plane was. There's some people that are trying to figure out what Nessie's hiding, and there's some stuff on there. People want the egg. So it's all these people looking for Nessie. At one point, Nessie, kills somebody that was under the water. She comes out and she like attacks like a soldier. It's a big paper mache thing. It's not the worst thing ever. The actual like monster is probably the coolest part about this fucking movie, to be honest. I kind of like the monster. I would give a thumbs up to Little Monster because I like monsters even if they're not perfectly made. I can see it's on a budget. It's a monster. It's practical. Yes, cool. Besides that, the movie's awful. It's boring. It's just not well done. It's not well shot. It's not. You know what? Actually, I'll take that back. There is some good establishing shots. It's not poor. It's not the worst shot movie ever, right? It's just really boring. It's really tedious. The plot sucks. The dialogue sucks. Most of the acting's terrible. The one guy who's kind of like the leader of like the whole kind of movement to try to get Nessie and stuff, he's a decent actor. I think he's been in a bunch of stuff. Everyone else is pretty bad. Pretty terrible. Pretty bad accents. Really weird spy espionage shit going on too. That's just not my favorite thing in the world. Loch Ness Horror is bad. It's bad. It's top tier bad movies of 82, and this is the second time watching. I come away from it like, just stop, please. Don't want to watch this anymore. There's a speech in here. He's like, what would you do? Like, that's how bad the Scottish accent is. And the old man, he's like, maybe yeah. What did you? It's fucking terrible. I want Duncan McLeish to watch the Loch Ness Horror, and I just want to hear his review. Duncan McLeish from Podcast Under the Stairs. He's from Scotland, and I just would love him to watch this movie and just hear him lose his mind. But the guy who's like talking about what people want Nessie for, and it's just like, my brain is like, peace. It's that whole Simpsons gag, right, where somebody's talking to Homer, and he's like, just, you can stay here, but I'm out of here. And your brain just walks and his body collapses to the ground. No, I gotta say no on this, man. I'll watch other Larry Buchanan movies like the It's Alive and Monster Looks Fun on there. This one just doesn't work. Maybe it was too ambitious for what he had, and I should praise ambition. I usually do, but this one just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. It's really bad. All right, next up is a Patreon pick in 1973. Great year for horror films and films in general. And this is Ganja and Hess. Now, this is crazy that I've never seen this. Starring Dwayne Jones and Marlene Clark. Dwayne Jones, of course, from Night of the Living Dead, 1968. one of my all-time favorite movies, one of the movies I find the most important in the horror subgenre. So Ganja and Hess has been on my radar to watch for like 20 years. I've had like 2 different DVDs. I have the Blu-ray. So I'm like, I got it on Patreon. I was like, awesome. Very excited to watch this movie. I put this in, and right away it does this whole like kind of scroll in there and talks about, you know, a professor going there and getting bit or stabbed 3 times by this magical blade, and then afterwards he had the taste for blood. And I'm like, oh, this is totally up my alley. It reminds me of Thirst from 2009, the Korean film. It reminds me of Martin. And I was like, oh, Jesus, predates Martin. And it has like a lot of the cultural stuff and significance and shit like that. I was like, and the 70s feel, I was like, this is totally my jam. Dwayne Jones is a fucking fantastic actor. Great look, awesome. Maureen Clark's great too. And basically, Bill Gunn's in here, the director. He has a good role too. And so, I don't remember why he's visiting him, but Dwayne Jones lives in this big, isolated kind of mansion and everything like that. He's addicted to blood. He's a fucking vampire, but not your traditional vampire. More the Transfiguration, more the Martin kind of style vampire, right? Not necessarily in the vein of Mosquito the Rapist, because that guy wasn't really a vampire at all. He just was, you know, like a Richard kind of Speck kind of character where he just wanted the blood. Richard Chase, sorry, Speck's a different guy, different psycho, but Richard Chase who wanted the blood. So, we kind of pair this up where, you know, Dwayne Jones is having this like conversation with like Bill Gunn, and he's staying there, and Bill Gunn's just suicidal. He's not doing well, and he's doing this poetry and everything like that, and he actually kills himself in Dwayne Jones' house. And there's this like scene where Dwayne Jones licks the blood off the bathroom floor, which you're like, oh wow, it's tomato juice, but hell man, it's pretty effective to be honest. And so Dwayne Jones, Bill Gunn's wife comes looking for him. That's Maureen Clark, and she's got this whole personality, this whole kind of vibe, this whole character, and it's a really interesting character. She comes in, she's very like rude and short, and just like very, you know, matter of fact, and just upfront with everything. Where is he? Yada yada. I do what I want. You come get me. All this kind of shit like that. And over time, like you realize why she's like that. You warm up to her a lot because she tells this great story about, you know, getting yelled at by her mother, and you're just like, yeah. I love that. I love that scene. This great fucking monologue by an actress, and she just blows it out of the water. So they obviously start a relationship, and you know, Dwayne Jones has like this. He doesn't really feel like he wants to be a vampire. You know, he's addicted to the blood. There's times when he visits out and picks up prostitutes and kills them, and you do see a supernatural element where he is, you know, attacked by people and he can't be killed. But this movie says something else, you know, like there's a religious aspect to it, and a religious aspect where he goes to church. And I don't want to spoil everything, but that stuff's powerful. It works really well. I thought it was great. I thought it was, you know, very much a product of its time, very ahead of its time at the same time. I love the 70s look. I love the acting. I love the music in here. It's great. The backstory, everything. It's just such a tremendous movie, a very important piece. Obviously going to be important to like black culture and stuff for the film and everything like that. The DP was an African American. The 2 stars were. The director was. And this was cut to ribbons when it first came out. They cut it down to a 90-minute version or something like that, and they always tried to sell it as a sexploitation movie or, you know, a vampire movie, and the director was trying to do something else, and it had a lot of balls, and it just was different and unique. It was an art film, like, right? Like, it was an art film. Like, there's so many horror films that are kind of like art films or slow burns or just different. Like, Let's Scare Jessica to Death kind of reminds me of kind of like an art film, a slow film. It's like bringing up these kind of things about, you know, the human state, the human condition, and I think this one does it too. And the idea that it's Dwayne Jones in a starring role, something so different from Night of the Living Dead, right? He didn't do that many movies, really, that, you know, the horror crowd would know. And he didn't live that long, from my understanding. I don't think he did live very long, but this is a tremendous performance. Very subtle, but very true and very honest. I love this movie. I thought it was fucking great. I knew I would. I know that Spike Lee kind of redirected it, or remade it, kind of the Sweet Blood of Jesus, I think, is kind of a semi-remake. I've not seen that, so I can't confirm or deny that, but I hear it is kind of a remake. As far as the special features, we have The Blood of the Thing, an interview-based documentary produced for the 98 DVD release, audio commentary by producer Chris Schultz, actress Maureen Clark, cinematography James Hinton, and composer Sam Wayman. Original screenplay by Bill Gunn, essay on the making of the film and subsequent, I can't say that word right now because subsequent, I can't say it right now. Sometimes that happens. Recutting by Dave Walker and Tim Lucas. Yeah, so basically they cut the shit out of this movie, and it drove them all mad. They were pissed off for a good reason, because they ruined the fucking movie. But anyways, Ganja and Hess, it's Kino Blu-ray. Pick it up. Great movie, highly recommended. Wonderful acting, wonderful score, wonderful cinematography. Got a great gritty look to it, great 70s look to it. If you love untypical vampire movies, this one's totally for you. If you love Martin, you'll love Ganja and Hess. If you like Transfiguration, you'll like this one as well. If you're like, I like my vampires weird and different and bizarre, Let's Scare Jessica to Death's another one. Yeah, I will put it in that kind of vein. Or what's the one, The Haunting of Julia? I feel like it has that kind of vibe to it. It's more low budget than The Haunting of Julia or Full Circle, but I would compare it to Let's Scare Jessica to Death and Martin. I feel like it's in that kind of vein, and Transfiguration. So check, mixture of those three movies maybe, but great. Ganja and Hess, fantastic. All right, let's get in these questions, comments, and concerns. So Ken Coakley, I actually liked the Friday remake from time it came out. I was usually a bigot against remakes. Texas Chainsaw 2003, Fright Night, Fog, Prom Night were terrible in my honest opinion. I liked the Night of the Living Dead remake as well as The Dawn, The Thing, The Fly, Invasion of Body Snatchers were good remakes, but I like the originals more. Friday the 13th didn't come across as a remake to me as much as it struck me as a sequel. People are quick to condemn the 2009 version, but I'll take it over the movies that succeeded Jason Lives. I like Kane Hodder, but I didn't like any of the movies in which he played Jason. I believe he shouldn't have been upset over Freddy vs. Jason because I didn't like that one either. Yeah, you know what? I do think the remake is better than the ones after Jason Lives. Let's be honest. I think so. I'd have to rewatch those, but I think you're right on that. Also, I like the remakes you like. Add in The Blob too, but I just think the Blob remake's actually better, and The Thing by a long shot. The Fly, I think it's close. I think it's closer than people give credit for. I do like the Invasion of Body Snatchers original more than the remake, and of course Night and Dawn originals. The Night is closer than the Dawn. The original Dawn blows the remake out of the fucking water. Okay, in the 2009 version, I like the characters. He's back to Friday the 13th. I wasn't bothered by Jason being a tunnel rat, and aside from that, they didn't change the character much, and the dialogue wasn't that bad. Not as bad as the dialogue in 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, anyway. You know what? I agree with that. I do like the Texas Chainsaw remake, but Lee Ermey makes that movie, and I was like, why is the dialogue suck in this movie so bad? And Lee Ermey's so great, and I've come to find out Lee Ermey improv'd all his fucking lines. That's why he comes across so good. I remember seeing the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre and rolling my eyes when they were talking about being excited about going to see Leonard Skinner and Jessica Biel wafting on about hoping they play Freebird. I thought the writers were trying to make Leatherface the hero of the story. The fact that there are people who think that version of TCM was better and the original boggles my mind. Me too. Now on to The Convent. I saw this movie at my local cinema that was doing a month of Adrienne Barbeau films to commemorate her award that she was going to receive at the end of the month. During that month, they also showed a short film called Alice Jacobs is Dead. It was a zombie movie in which a doctor played by John Lazar, who starred in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, tries to prevent his wife from becoming a zombie by injecting her with a serum. It's really good. Anyway, The Convent reminded me of the original Night of the Demons. A bunch of moronic teens go to an abandoned building to spend the night there. The Mo character looked like an awful lot like Angela. The demon makeup was pretty good. It wasn't without its flaws. The dialogue was pretty bad, especially Barbeau's Mo. Barbeau's Mo didn't have many good lines. I was nervous about the dog the first time I saw it. Luckily, he survived. Coolio, R.I.P., and Will Mosley were hilarious as the Run-A-Cops. The writers missed a funny gag when the Coolio called a couple guys white boy. The dog whimpered. They should have a subtitle saying, "Hey, I'm part white." I thought they would have been funny. Also, when they mentioned Dairy Queen, but it called it Dairy Cream, I'm sure they were trying to avoid a lawsuit. No doubt. The film was mildly offensive to me, a Catholic, when they talk about nuns catching fire, and Mo said it must have been a beautiful sight. That was almost as offensive as her mentioning being a Menendo fan. Back in my thrash metal days, my friends called me that because I looked like one of the members. It was meant to bust my chops. Now, as for Dark Knight of Scarecrow, I haven't seen it in a long time. Larry Drake, the star of the movie, ended up becoming a star for a special needs character on the TV show L.A. Law. Yeah, of course. I remember thinking Dark Knight of Scarecrow wasn't half bad for a TV movie. I have the Blu-ray, but it's in storage until I start walking again. I'll get it out of the nursing home. It's actually really great, even for just a fantastic movie from 1981. The characters are well developed. It's got a great Halloween feel. The cinematography is really good. Not half bad is an understatement to me, honestly. I think it's fucking one of the best movies of 81. Personal opinion, of course. Hope you get better. Collectivists definitely will be getting the Synapse release of The Convent. The DVD looked too dark. Angela 150, great as always, James. Thank you. Ilk Vomit 88. Kung Fu from Beyond the Grave stars Indonesian Kung Fu star Billy Chong, whose legit bangers, Superpower, Jade Claw, and Sun Dragon are must within the Kung Fu genre. Thank you. Jason Bovey, was great to hear your review of the Provane exhibit. I remember being excited to see the film years and years ago, given that I love horror anthologies, and talented filmmakers involved. But given the time that passed, I all but gave up on it ever being released. I definitely gonna check this one out. Yeah, it's good. I liked it. Nick Mua from Belgium. Marcus Nispel is a good director. I definitely don't hate his Texas Chainsaw Massacre reinterpretation. A pity his feature directing days seem to be behind him, though he still directs TV shows from time to time. Also, don't you love his mustache? It's impressive. Not as impressive as yours, of course. Congrats again on your Creep Show episode. Your programs are never boring. This takes a good deal of skill, and I don't doubt or a pact with the devil. Repost of my previous comments as part of them went missing, it would appear. We lost another fantastic thespian, James Earl Jones. He was a master of many genres, whatever Mr. Jones was part of, and yes, that includes Exorcist II, The Heretic, he made better. May he rest in peace. I'm most pleased you're showing Red State some love. It's an excellent contained thriller. It's chock full of great actors, but mainly John Goodman, Melissa Leo, and the late great Michael Parks. The young cast is very good as well, especially Kyle Gallner. Kevin Smith surprised the hell out of me with his little gem. This movie and The Haunting of Connecticut made me a Gallner fan for sure. He truly is a king of classy mid-budget horror. Not my words. This comes from the chaps over at Red Leader Media. Long may he continue to make them. Questions. What's your absolute favorite James Earl Jones performance? I can't quite decide between Conan the Barbarian, Lion King, and Hunt for Red October. I mean, it's got to be Conan the Barbarian. He's a goddamn snake monster god. Which film made you a Kyle Gallner fan? Red State. Honestly, and I thought he was great in Smile too. Red State deals with fanaticism. Why are we so keen to be fanatic? Is it ingrained in us as a species? I mean, people want to belong to something, right? Sometimes they overtake it. Sometimes, people aren't wired right. Sometimes they're in a weird spot in life and something comes along and it wins them over. I don't know. Who's to say? We're all very unique and different. Maybe if you bribe them with milk, cheese, or a dead rat, one of the cast could track down the Patreon bag. No, it's gone. It's gone. Dave Chopin won a DVD of Dark Knight of the Scarecrow 2, the sequel, and didn't watch it for a few years. Once I did, I think I stopped after the first scene. We'll revisit, maybe. Just was disappointed with the feel of it. Original is a classic for me. He also goes on. Mana is great, which is a short from Profane Exhibit. Like you saw it way back, Michael put everything into his work. He says, forget shame, Izakova bailed, which is the director of Philosophy of a Knife and Nails and Visions of Suffering, and I understand why, but still a bit unfair for the fans. Expo 225, Profane Exhibit was a huge letdown for me. There was people hyping it up saying it's one of the most shocking, vile films in existence, and I didn't find any of the sorts disturbing at all, just a bunch of smashed up heads with decent gore effects. Ryan Nicholson's short is probably my favorite, and that isn't saying much. I wasn't disturbed by it, but I still think it was good, and it was hyped up a lot, but you gotta avoid hype, man. Sorry. Pietra Lampella, I should watch Dark Knight again. I remember liking it, but for me it lacked real tension because you as a viewer wanted those people to die. With slashers, I usually either like the sleazy ones where you don't care about the characters but instead enjoy the trashiness of it, or the more serious and dark ones where you feel bad for the victims. Dark Knight has quite a serious tone, but you still root for the killer. So that kind of threw me off. Talking about sleaze, okay, so for me Dark Knight is more of a revenge tale. The characters are super well developed, they're well acted, they interact amazingly, the small town feels real, feels lived in, and the way it unfolds is just amazing. Like, I love watching these bad characters. They're not bad characters, they're bad people. But the performances are great. I don't need to like the characters to give a flying fuck. I just want to watch them, Like I said, that's just, I enjoy liking bad guys sometimes. And they're bad guys. And they're great in their roles. And they're interesting. So, where are we at? And it's a revenge movie. So, you kind of want to dislike them, but you want to watch them at the same time. There we go. Talking about sleazy, I always liked the Friday remake. I thought it was fun and entertaining, was hoping for a sequel. Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake was fine, except that Leatherface's mask on the movie has a shiny, plastically look that you never mistake it for human skin, and otherwise had high production values for a slasher, so I always wondered how they messed that small but important detail up. Or do they think that it'd be too disturbing for a modern audience if it was actually looked like human skin? No idea. Fun, 7256, you look very similar to Freddie Mercury. Is it this intentional? I have never tried to look like anybody intentionally, except basically when I'm doing a Halloween costume or in a movie. That's it. I have a mustache and I have dark hair. I don't try to look like anybody. It's funny, I've always got people saying I look like somebody growing up or whatever. Like, oh, you look like this person from this band, or you look like, Jesus or Rasputin or Charles Manson, and it changed, over time, Freddie Mercury, whatever. It is what it is. It doesn't upset me. It's just like I don't purposely try to look like anyone. I travel to the beat of my own drum, whatever. But let's get into the update. All right, let's get in this update. Got my Vinegar Syndrome stuff. First up is The Howling 2 on 4K. Directed Christopher Lee, Red Brown, Sybil Danning. It's a fun movie, crappy movie, directed by Felipe Mora. Who also directed The Howling 3, The Beast Within. This one I remember liking. It's been a while. Definitely going to rewatch it for 85. There's a really funny music in here. You know, the Howling series is actually ridiculous. Delrium, photo of Gioia. And this is the Lamberto Bava movie, if I'm not mistaken. Also a 4K. This is the eyeball one. I know there was a Blu-ray from Code Red not too long ago. But yeah, this one looks fun. I don't think I've ever watched this one. Got a bunch of features on there. Definitely looking forward to checking this out. 1987. Good year. Good year. Then next up we have Cruel Britannia, and this is three thrillers from the UK. We have Craze from '74, is it? That's the Freddie Francis movie. Penny Gold and Crucible of Terror. I don't know what Penny Gold is. I've never heard of that one. But yeah, here's what we got. Cool stuff. Love when they do these kind of special editions like that. Or these like box sets with like movies, and they're like, I was hoping that the three, they said that, I was hoping it'd be a Freddie Francis box where we got the Ghoul and the Werewolf one, just Werewolf, Legend of the Werewolf, along with Craze. That'd have been pretty cool to have a Freddie Francis box. Then we have Bloodline. This is VCA or VSL. Okay, this one I'm not too familiar with. It's got a big cast in here, but not seen it. Hear mixed things about the movie. I think there's a good commentary on here, of course. Where is it at? I think it's, is it Nathaniel Thompson and Troy Howarth, of course. Gotta love that. What else do we got? Next up is Asylum of Terror. That's right. Fear breeds where evil lurks. This is VHS Shitfest. Death Row, The Haunted Prison. Don't know much about this one. Oh, that looks awesome. Looks low budget. Looks fun. Looks like it's up my alley. And then we got Flesh Freaks. This definitely looks up like my alley. Something I would have watched when I was like 13. I used to watch all these kind of movies. Saturn's Core. I don't know why I've never seen Flesh Freaks. Kind of looks like maybe some like Meat Market kind of vibes, which is a fun movie. Brian Clement movie. Well, series. There's 3 of them. Then we have My Heart Is That Eternal Rose, and this is Patrick Tan, and I picked this up because he did the movie Love Massacre, and he really helped Wong Kar-wai get his start and everything like that. So this is supposed to be a good film here. Interested for sure to check it out. Good stuff. What else we got? We got a couple Fukasaku movies. Great director. Violent Panic and Big Crash. This is 2, right? Yeah. This is, what's that label? Film Movement. Yeah, this director's great. He's just one of the most prolific Japanese directors ever. And he just does a fantastic job, man. His stuff from his so many good movies. Then we picked up a couple older releases that were on sale. Adam Rifkin Film Festival. This is a bunch of his shorts on there. I grabbed this one. I think once it's gone, it's gone. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to grab it because there's probably a bunch of short horror films that he made that are going to be a lot of fun. Rifkin's a pretty fun director. Then we have Surf Reality, which I heard is a really crazy-ass movie. Movie of the Month Club Collection, New York's 91 to 92. And I was not sure if I was going to get this, but it was on sale. And these just look too fucking weird to pass up. So here we go. I grabbed it. All these weird movies. Alien Sex Phone Psycho. Dick and Jane drop acid and die. Okay, I think I made the right choice picking this one up. And then next up we have... Oop, bump the sound. That's going to be annoying. Next up we have Red to Kill. One of the greatest Cat 3 Hong Kong movies ever. From Air 444. 4 whenever. 4 4s. I don't know. I sound like the guy from Great Outdoors. 66 times got struck by lightning. So, yeah. It's got a commentary on here by my buddies Bruce Holtcheck and Art Editor. Yes. Wild Ratings Talking Category 3 with Army Vomoa and Mike Leader. That's cool, too. Video essay by Jerome Binji. Horrible reviews. So, yeah. Very cool. Great movie, by the way. Fucking bonkers. Then last, we have the Blu-ray of Trivium. What is that? Trivial. James L. Edwards. Yeah, James L. Edwards' third directorial film here. He did, I can't think of the... Brimstone Incorporated was his second. He did Her Name Was Krista. James L. Edwards is an indie actor. So yeah, finally got a Blu-ray here. Definitely going to check this out. Going to watch this, and Side Effects may vary when I get a chance. But yeah, great stuff signed by him. Anyways, back to the video. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. As always, have a good one.